Pray for me this morning. I'm everywhere. I had a poem I was going to read. I don't know where it went. Been a rough week for me last week in a lot of different ways, and I'm struggling this morning, because I've lost a mother-in-law Friday morning that was every bit as much a mother to me as my own. And I'm struggling this morning, and my heart is broken this morning because the mother of my children's heart is broken and I can't fix it. And I've spoken with her son this morning through text message. It's a tough day for her today. Just pray for her and remember her and our family. But I want to talk to you this morning as I've thought a lot. Pray for me and us in this coming week. I had some announcements. I don't know where I'm at this morning. I'll be giving you later instructions on what and when and all of that as far as the funeral proceedings. I've already set in motion and everything. She is coming back here. She will be buried in Louisville Cemetery, and she'll be back here, I guess maybe tomorrow or Tuesday, and we'll get some things in order. But she did not have life insurance, and so in lieu of flowers, there is a memorial fund that is going to be set up. Beth is going to take care of that tomorrow for me, and I'll get you the information on that. And in light of that, I want to talk to you this morning on mothers who make a difference. And as I began to think a lot about my mother-in-law, and mothers are unique people. They have the ability to drive us absolutely insane. And my mother-in-law could drive me insane. But I'm going to try not to preach her funeral this morning and talk to you about mothers that make a difference, because as I begin to think about ever since the moment that God created the family in the book of Genesis, we find, where God created man, and soon after God created the woman. Thus the family began, and the family began with Adam and Eve, and since that very day there has been an attack upon the family, and especially in our country there is an assault upon the family. I began to look at some different things and how in this age that we live in the day that we live in, some 50% of marriages will end in divorce. I wonder what it was. I wonder what the percentages was in your days, Mama Jean. Not anything like that. My wife and I have been married 30 years this year, and I run across people so many times, and they'll say, especially around Christmas, and there'll be people that I haven't seen in years, and they'll say, how you doing? Good. You still married? Yep. And the next question is always, same woman? Well, yeah. And it's that way because just divorce is so popular. and it's an option these days. And I feel like there is an assault upon the family, and I feel like that Satan really focuses strategically upon the family. And he's got all kinds of different ways and tricks and traps and ways to destroy the family. He spends a lot of time on it, and he's doing a good job at it. And especially when the statistics are what they are. I don't remember, maybe some of you know what the statistics are for men and women that are incarcerated or in prison. What percentage of those come from split families? It's astronomical. I don't remember, so I'm not going to throw some lie at you and throw some number at you, make me sound small. But it's big. It's unbelievably big. And as I begin to think about this, and we're going to look at Matthew chapter 25 in just a moment, and I may or may not hold you very long. I'm learning not to make those promises. Sometimes I don't intend to be long, and I am. But I want you to see this morning the importance of the family and the importance that Satan places upon destroying the family. And I believe this to be so because Satan knows that if he can break the family up, that if he can get the mother or the father out of a child's life, he will then have a better opportunity at that child. And I believe that's proven to be so and proven to be the case in the society and the age that we live in by the statistics that we can look at. I heard this week at how I'll try not to get too political, but how some folks in this very country now, as of this week, are looking at changing the name of Mother's Day. I don't know if any of you have seen that in the news. They're looking at, we need to change the name of Mother's Day so as not to offend same-sex marriages. Listen, I want you to know this morning that there is a place, a very important place in every child's life for both a mother and a father. There are roles in a child's life that a mother can only feel. And there are roles in a child's life that only a father can feel. And it is such a powerful thing as God created it, and it carried out as God created it, that a child is raised with both a mother and a father. And that too many times is not the case. But that's okay. It's never too late for us to become the fathers and the mothers that God intended for us to be. No matter what the circumstance or the situation, or why the circumstance or the situation, it's time in America that mothers become the mothers that God intended for them to be and fulfill that role whether the father is there or not. And that the fathers stand up and become, I said something last Father's Day, and I said making babies will make you daddies, but it won't make you fathers. Having babies will make you moms, but it won't make you mothers. There's a need in a child's life for a mother that only you as a mother can feel. That only you as a mother can carry it out. And Satan has identified the importance of mothers and fathers and the strength that a family makes in a child's life, and he has tried his best to destroy that. And he knows the importance of both a father and a mother in a child's life. And if he can get the father out of the child's life, he knows that the mother will be burdened down with having to fulfill both roles. Listen, we are to pray for mothers this morning that are having to play both roles, and we are to pray for fathers this morning. I admire Eric so much for having to play the role of both father and mother to those little girls that he has. It ought not be so, but it is. Nevertheless, we need to be the mothers and the fathers that God has intended for us to be. All hope is not lost. It's not too late for us to be the mothers and the fathers that God intended. I believe this morning that Satan knows the importance of both a father and a mother. He knows the difference that both parents can make in a child's life. He knows the power and the influence that both a mother and a father have in a child's life. There is a need in every child's life for both. What can be said maternally can also be said spiritually. As far as spiritual mothers and maternal mothers. Too many times, children are forced to grow up without one or both parents. It ought not be so, but it is. But nevertheless, there's still hope. All hope is not gone. I'm not condemning anyone this morning. I'm telling you this morning that children are the ones that are suffering for our decisions, for our bad decisions. The children are the ones that suffer. And as I think about these things this morning, a father can and must fulfill certain roles and responsibilities in the life of a child, and the mother cannot fill those. And the same can be said this morning, that a mother can and must fulfill certain roles and responsibilities in a child's life that the father can't fill. And we need to pray this morning for mothers that are having to be both mother and father. And we need to pray this morning for fathers that are having to be both father and mother. But I want you to know this morning that whether the family is together or whether the family is apart, we still have an opportunity to impact the lives of our children. We still have an opportunity to influence the lives of our children by becoming the mothers or the fathers. And we'll talk about fathers in a few weeks. But this morning, I want to look at the mother that makes a difference. You can look up and find a lot of poems and a lot of sayings. And there's a couple that I have here. When I was just a little girl, my mother taught me the ways of the world. She taught me how to share my toys, not to talk to strangers, and how to understand boys. Years have passed, the world has changed, yet so many things remain the same. I still need her hand to hold, to take big steps and to cross new roads. No matter how I fall apart over a broken toy or a broken heart, she's always there to rescue me, to dry my tears and to dress my need. At the ready when times are tough, when I just need someone to trust, her heart is always standing by, no matter when, where, how, or why. Of all the things I know to be, and all the lessons taught to me, I know the most important one, my mother's work, is never done. There's another poem that was written about mothers, how mothers were created with 3 sets of eyes and 12 sets of hands and all of these things. And I'm thankful this morning for mothers. I'm thankful this morning for godly mothers. I'm thankful this morning for my mother and for my mother-in-law that's always accepted me for who I am when I was unacceptable. For a mother-in-law and a mother that's always loved me when I was unlovable. And I want to talk to you this morning about mothers that make a difference. We can make a difference. We must make a difference. There's been a failure, not just in the family, because of a lot of times the families are still together, but there still is no true motherhood or fatherhood, even though the families are still together. So there's still a failure there. So don't take me wrong this morning. I'm not condemning anyone this morning because they're divorced or the father's not in the picture. I'm telling you this morning that there are families that are still together, that motherhood and fatherhood is not in the picture. And it's time, especially in this age, that mothers become mothers and fathers become fathers. Not males and females, but mothers and fathers. Not moms and dads, but mothers and fathers. And do you know that there is a need in a child's life for the things that only a mother can do? I was reading these scriptures and was reading in several places, got finished up, and just went and worked things off my mind yesterday, and Stephen come by and said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I usually don't do this, but I was putting a transmission in my brother-in-law's truck yesterday, and it's been a long time since I've thrown tools. But I was out there working yesterday, and I've throwed fits and throwed tools and sat down and cried over bolts I couldn't get started. It was a mess. Because of the importance that the mother-in-law that I lost Friday morning played, the role that she played in my life. I can remember times back when she couldn't take care of herself, but she was sending food and money to us to make sure we had, and to make sure that we were all right. And it just, I said I was going to try not to preach her funeral this morning. I'm going to try to do that later in the week. But I'm really taken by the importance that, and have been reflecting on the importance that my mother and my mother-in-law have played in my life. And in many ways, my mother-in-law has been more of a mother to me than my own mother in many ways. And that's not to speak badly of my mother. She's been a good mother. She's always loved us and took care of us and everything. But a lot of people have some horror stories about in-laws. Oh, that mother-in-law. But I had a good one. She's always loved us, Adrian. She always took care of us when she couldn't even take care of herself, and she didn't have. But I want to look at the scriptures this morning, and in verse 21 of chapter 15. Then Jesus went out from there and departed from the region of Tyre and Sidon. Behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, Send her away, for she cries out after us. She's making a scene. She's creating a scene. And he answered and he said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. And he answered and said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat crumbs which fall from the master's table. And Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour. We could have read a lot of different places and a lot of different scriptures this morning on mothers and motherhood and the importance of mothers, but I want to look this morning at how this mother made a difference. This mother made a difference in her child's life. This mother had a daughter. She was a Gentile woman. She had no business approaching Jesus. She was a Gentile, or a dog race, or from the other side of the tracks, if you will. And but yet this woman came to Jesus on behalf of her daughter. This woman loved her daughter, and she came to Jesus on behalf of her daughter. And it reminds me of the little woman that had the issue of blood, that had no business being in the presence of Jesus and risked it all just to get to Jesus. And how this little Gentile woman risked it all just to get to Jesus on behalf of her daughter. I can testify this morning that I stand before you this morning a product of a praying grandmother, and a product of a praying mother, and the product of a praying mother-in-law. I know that this morning. I know that my mother still prays for me, and that my grandmother that's passed on was one of the most godly women that I have ever known, and one of the most influential women in my life. I can honestly say this morning of my grandmother that she is the only person that has ever been in my life that I have never heard her say one harsh word about any person. And if I was saying something harsh about you, Stephen, and even if I was right, she would defend you. She refused to speak evil of anybody. One of the most godly women I have ever known, and extremely influential in my life. Yes, I made some bad decisions. I chose to do my own deal. I chose to go my own way. But the things that my grandmother had placed in my life, and that praying grandmother that knew I had wandered out there, that was praying for me and that was reaching God on my behalf. She loved me, and she was crying out and reaching God on my behalf. This little woman that we're reading about right here risked it all and said, I must get to Jesus on behalf of my daughter. My daughter is demon-possessed, and this woman risked it all, and she laid everything on the line for her daughter. She was a Gentile woman that's known as a dog race, if you will. And brings to light some of the things that were said a little later on. She was an outsider, or an outcast. Didn't even belong in the presence of Jesus. But she said, no matter where I'm from or who I am or what I've done, I must get to Jesus on behalf of my daughter that lays sick and is demon-possessed. She sacrificed much for the sake of her daughter. She reached Jesus and prayed and begged. These are very intense cries that she's crying out and begging Jesus to take care of her little daughter. Amen. And I want you to know this morning that what we cannot do in the lives of our children, God can. If we'll only bring one of the hardest things that we'll ever do. I remember Wanda dealing with our son. That boy of hers. I remember the day after trying to do the best we knew how to do. I remember the time when she finally surrendered and said, "Okay, God, I give him to you. He is yours. You deal with him. You take care of him. You do in him what I've not been able to do." And I remember the day that she trusted God with our son. And it scared him to death. When she told him, she said, "Listen, I'm done. I have trusted God with you." Whatever that means, wherever that goes. Scared him to death. But listen, I want you to know something this morning. What we can't do in the lives of our children, God can. If we'll just lift our children up to God and reach God on behalf of our children. I think there's a failure in society because that praying grandmother that I had, I wonder how many praying grandmothers there are and how many real, genuine praying mothers that there are today. One of the greatest things that you can do, we as mothers, you can do as mothers, is to reach Jesus on the behalf of your children. To trust your children in the hands of Jesus. And yes, we need to do a baby dedication while I'm thinking of it. I just seen and thought of that. But we'll be doing that before long. But there is a need in a child's life for a mother, and only a mother can feel that need. As I begin to look at these scriptures of this little woman, it's obvious that this little mother loved her daughter. She loved her so much so, and mothers love in a way. I'm going to touch on fathers on Father's Day, but I want you to know that in God's perfect plan, mothers love in a way that fathers cannot ever love. Mothers love in a way a father cannot ever know. Because the mother has carried and has borne this child, and there is a deep connection. And a father can never love in a child's life like a mother can. And a mother can never lead in a child's life like a father can. There's positions for both. Fathers will never be able to love like a mother, and a mother will never be able to lead like a father. I got that look. Most of the time, I don't have to say nothing. Everybody knows the look. And it's a look that my children have always responded to. Fathers can just lead in a way that mothers cannot lead, but mothers can love in a way that a father will never be able to love. As much as I love my children, I don't know the love that my mother has, or that Wanda has for our children. And this little woman loved her daughter. Not only that, but this little woman loved her daughter more than she loved herself. That's almost a thing of the past many times in society today. This little woman loved her daughter more than she loved herself or her reputation or anything else, and she laid it all on the line for her daughter. I thought this morning, that mothers would reach heaven on behalf of their children, as this little mother did, and that mothers would hope for and work for a better life for their children than they had themselves. I asked someone one time, I said, that had their daughter, and I said, that had been through some things and had some issues and different things, and I said, do you know who the real victim in all of this is? And this lady looked at me and said, "Who, me?" I said, "Lord, no, you're not the victim, you're the cause." I said, that beautiful little girl is the victim in all of this. You've got to get your act together. You've got to get things straightened out. This little girl needs you. And she needs you, and you have a role to fulfill in her life that nobody else is ever going to be able to fill. A foster parent will be able to fill it to a certain degree. But you can fulfill a role in this child's life that no one else can ever fill. It's your job. It's your responsibility. And I thought how selfish a society we live in today. And I ain't beating your mothers up. I'm going to get to some things in a minute. But there's a failure in society today of both mothers and fathers. Real, genuine mothers and fathers. Not moms and dads, mothers and fathers. And men, you'll get it Father's Day morning. But this morning is about mothers. You have such an important role in a child's life. Ain't nobody will ever be able to do in and for that child as you have opportunity to do. Nobody can ever love that child the way you know and love that child. And we must rise to the challenge of being we. You must rise to the challenge of being the mother that you're supposed to be. Just bear with me this morning. I ain't never going to be a mother. Listen, there's a need in a child's life. Oh, that mothers in this generation would think of their children before they think of themselves as it used to be. But it's not so much that way a lot of times anymore. I told my son, Lord's let him live 24 years so far. But I told him, I said, listen, because he's divorced. I told him, I said, that little boy needs both a mother and a father. And this can still work. You've got to man up and be a father. You've got to man up and lead him in the right way. And you got to quit getting out here. I just told him how it was. I don't mean to be offensive this morning, but I'm just going to throw it all out. If I make you mad, you don't have to come back. But one of the things that is becoming an increasing, intense concern of mine is men and women that irresponsibly make babies that they can't or they won't take care of.
Amen.
That bothers me. That bothers me. Because once that child is born, there is a need in that child's life for a father and a mother. And we've got to work with wherever we're at and whatever we've got. You can't do anything to change the circumstances. But you can decide this morning that I am going to become the mother that God intends for me to be and fulfill my roles and my responsibilities in my child's life. And as fathers, we must make the same decisions. But again, we're on mothers this morning. I know this is coming out a little bit rough this morning. But there is a need in society today for mothers who will cry themselves to sleep at night, reaching heaven on behalf of their children, who will wet the carpet by their bedside, praying for their children, who will be faithful and loyal in prayer and reaching heaven on behalf of their children. Oh, that mothers would hope for and work for a better life for their children than they had. That mothers in this generation would sacrifice for their children as mothers have sacrificed in the past. That mothers would put their children before themselves. This little woman that we're reading about, she laid it all on the line, and she cried out to God, and she tracked down Jesus. She heard that Jesus was near, and she tracked him down and got to Jesus on behalf of her little girl. And Jesus said, I was sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And she came and worshipped him, and she wouldn't give up. She wouldn't give up. Mothers don't give up on their children. Mothers hang on and hope for the best and don't give up. Mothers keep the fathers from choking the children many times. At least in my house. Mothers love their children. Mothers, this little woman wouldn't get up. She worshiped God and she pleaded with God, and she said, yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. And Jesus answered and said to her, your faith, great is your faith. Great. Mothers ought to believe. Ought to believe the very best for their children. Mothers have an opportunity to influence a child the way a father can never influence a child. There's something about a relationship with a mother that is different than my relationship with my father. Just as it's different in the ways that the roles that the mothers and the fathers play in the child's life, it's still different to me as a son. My relationship with my dad is the one that I look to lead me, that I watched, and that I at this point in my life try to model my life after and try to follow, because he was a good father. But it's my mother that I remember was there taking care of me and helping me with my homework and making sure that us three boys had something to eat while she done without. It's my mother that raised me and tried to pour into me and teach me all the right things. My mother played a tremendous role in my life. And mothers are important. There is, you know, mothers just have a natural instinct, a maternal instinct, if you will. I mean, you can see it even in animals. How mothers and what your puppies, whatever, how they just have a natural instinct to protect and to love and to care for and to nurture and to watch over and all. There's just it's just natural. You don't have to teach them. It's just there. It just comes natural. And you know something else I thought about mothers? Mothers need to be needed. They need to be needed. They have this maternal instinct and this desire to love and to nurture and all of these things, and they need to be needed. My mother-in-law was always looking for somebody to take care of. She was always looking for somebody to help. She just had this giving spirit about her, and always wanted to take care of and to help somebody when she just couldn't take care of herself many times. I remember standing up on this stage 6 months ago and preaching Dennis's funeral, her husband, and videoed that and sent that down there. And I remember how she had a lot of physical problems herself, but it was just in her heart to take care of him and to even mother him. There's just this natural instinct inside of a woman and a mother to care for and to love and to nurture and to provide for and protect and all of these things. And you see it even in animals. And you know, this is not only maternally, but this is also spiritually. Spiritually. As I thought about it, and like I said, my heart is breaking this morning, because My wife's heart is broken and I can't fix it. Ain't nothing I can do. Because she's hurting. I can't fix that. But as I've prayed for her and I've thought a lot about her and sent her a message this morning and told her how thankful I was that she was the mother that she's always been to my children. And I could preach on her this morning and how she has always given and done without and everything else to make sure there's just a... And you know what? She's the same way spiritually. She had, and I remember preaching last year on the three fathers that I have. I have an earthly father and a spiritual father, Ronnie Hepperly, and then I have a heavenly father. And I began to think yesterday, Mama Jean, how I have a maternal earthly mother, but I have a spiritual mother as well. Well, who's that? You're elected, Mama Jean. This is my spiritual mother. This is the one that I know. I remember being in the hospital room with her, and she looked at me and she said, the only reason I can figure that I'm at your church is for you. And I know that my spiritual mother is praying for me, and she writes me little notes. And she gives me little notes and things, and there's a natural instinct in her, even though her children are grown, to continue to love and to lead and to use those motherly qualities even in spiritual children, if you will. I know Lisa is a spiritual child of yours. Lisa's going to be coming out for us not this Tuesday but next Tuesday and speaking for us. And she's a spiritual daughter of mine, if you will. She was one of the first adopted. As a matter of fact, she was the first one I think that one that I adopted. But there's a need. I mean, there's a need to be needed because mothers have this natural stuff. And you know, I can remember how, and the same applies spiritually and physically. Mothers have the ability to just absolutely nag and drive us insane sometimes. Anytime you got Mama or Wanda and her mother together, I just want to get out of the way. Just leave them be. And many times it's the same way with Wanda and Stephanie, because they just got this knack of just driving you crazy and picking and poking and just driving you crazy sometimes. They do. And they're doing their job. But it's natural. And you know, spiritually it happens the same way sometimes. And you know what happens, Stephen, is we get toward, as children, we start growing up, and we get to the point that we really don't want Mama telling us what to do anymore. We think we got this, but really Mama does know best. Don't you, Mama Jean? Mama does know best, and when we get a little bit older, and the older I get, the smarter my mother gets. And I began to realize that Mama did know what she was talking about, that Mama did try to teach me best, that Mama did try to lead me in the right direction and teach me. And the older I get, the wiser my father gets as well. But I'm going somewhere with this. But it's the same way spiritually. A lot of times, I mean, if you don't have any children, you can still be a spiritual mother to somebody. But spiritual mothers have the ability to drive you insane. You know, we get to thinking as children that our mothers, well, she just wants to control me and tell me what to do, when really she's just trying to make sure, she's just trying to look out after me. And spiritual mothers, the same thing. Sometimes we get to where, and even spiritual fathers, you know, we get to where, man, I don't want him telling me what to do. But he's looking out for me, and spiritual mothers look out for us, but sometimes they too have the ability to seem controlling. You know, when I started growing up, and I started getting about 17 and approaching 18, well, I was going to be a man. I didn't want nobody controlling me or telling me what to do. Oh, how much better off I'd have been if I'd have just listened to my mama. I could have saved myself a lot of time, a lot of trouble if I'd just listened to my mama. But I didn't. I didn't want her. She was overbearing and trying to control my life, trying to control my marriage, trying to control this and control that. She's really just trying to look out after me and help me and love me. And I chose to go my own way. That cost me. Same thing applies spiritually. You see, the thing is, the way the mother and the father and the family works, the same works spiritually as well. And as I thought about these things, this little mother made a difference in her child's life. This little mother decided that she was going to lay it all on the line, and she was going to get to Jesus on behalf of her daughter. And this mother, because she decided to find Jesus, and she decided that she was going to lay it all on the line, no matter who she was or where she was from or what she had done or anything else. She had to get to Jesus on behalf of her daughter. She made a difference in her daughter's life. And a lot of things that we can do to make a difference, but what I want to look at this morning is mothers that make the biggest difference in a child's life are mothers who decide. Mothers who decide that I'm going to pray and trust God, and I'm going to be persistent and endlessly and tirelessly and faithfully pray for my children. Mothers that'll stand in the gap for their children. I've got a daughter that's doing pretty good and a son that's not doing hardly as good. But I, as his father, and she, as his mother, have decided that we're going to stand in the gap and we're going to reach Jesus on his behalf, and God will do in him what we've not been able to do. Persistently, mothers that make the biggest difference. You know, you don't always see the efforts. I never seen my grandmother wet the carpet by her bed, but I've heard stories, and I know that she did. I've never seen my grandmother wet her pillow, crying herself to sleep at night, praying for us boys that had wandered astray. Bless her heart, she never had but one granddaughter. That's a bunch of mean grandsons is all she ever had for the most part. I never seen that, but I knew it was there. Sometimes the most powerful things a mother can do are the things that are not seen. Earnestly, sincerely, faithfully, patiently, and endlessly and tirelessly praying for their children. This little woman wasn't going to let where she was from or what she had done or anything else stand in her way. She was going to get to Jesus. And I thought the mothers that make the most difference in their lives are the mothers who persistently and endlessly and tirelessly and faithfully pray for their children. Mothers who stand in the gap. Mothers who will love their children unconditionally and unendingly. A mother's love really never ends. I'm not qualified to preach on a mother's love. I tried that last year and I found out I wasn't a mother, so I really ain't qualified to preach on mother's love. But listen, I can speak from my own household. She loves that boy of mine in a way that I'll never know, because I've wanted to. Matter of fact, I had him by the throat one night up on the wall, and his feet wasn't even touching the ground. He was swinging. And if it had been for his mother, I might have killed him that night, but I did. I ain't proud of it, but I had him by the throat, and I had him up on the wall when he was a senior in high school, and his feet swinging on the ground. And his mother's standing in a gap for him. And his mama's loving him. And it wasn't that I didn't love him, but his mama loved him. His mama loves him and loved him in an unconditional way. And I mean, I'm just wanting the best for him, and I'm loving him, and I'm trying to get it in him like this. I'm trying to strangle it in him. I had him cornered up one night. He's a 2nd or 3rd degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I had him cornered up one night, and I said, if there's any of that karate you won't be using, you best be getting some of it out. Because I'm about to stomp you all over his living room. I ain't never heard his mama deal with him like that. His mama deal with him pretty hard. Mothers and fathers have a role on. Even though he was about a 2nd or 3rd degree black belt, his eyes was big as golf balls, and he decided he didn't want to use any of it. But his mama has loved him more unconditionally than I can ever know. His mama has loved him when I could strangle him. His mama has restrained me when I mean, that girl of mine never caused me no problems at all. That boy, I don't know if I'm making any sense this morning, but his mama has always loved him. Wanda has always loved him unconditionally and unendingly in a way that I have struggled to love him. That may not sound right to you this morning, but she's been way more patient with him than I have. The mothers that make the biggest difference are the mothers that love their children unendingly and unconditionally and patiently seek God on behalf of their children. I thought this. Mothers that make the biggest difference are the mothers that teach their children right and wrong. There is a lack in society today of this kind of mother. A mother that will be persistent and tirelessly reach heaven on behalf of their children. There's a need for that today. That's not happening like it used to happen years ago. It's not happening. It's not like it once was. The mothers that have made the biggest difference throughout time and is the mothers that have persistently and endlessly and tirelessly and faithfully prayed for their children, and the mothers that have loved their children unconditionally and that have loved them with an unending and an unconditional love. There's a desperate need for that in society today. And it's never too late. It's never too late to become this mother. This mother makes a difference. I've not always been the best father, but as I'm going to take a look at the need of fathers and a father's role in a few weeks, it's not too late, Mama Jean, for me to be the father that God always intended me to be. It's never too late for us to decide and determine within ourselves that we're going to be the mothers that you are going to be the mothers that God intends for you to be. I can't get that right to save my life. See there? Glad you guys are you here for the summer? You're done now? Congratulations, Mason graduated college Friday. I failed to mention that a while ago. Mothers who will teach their children right and wrong. Mothers who will raise their kids in church with biblical principles and standards are the ones that make the biggest difference. This is simple this morning. The biggest thing that you could ever do for your children is to decide that I am going to follow Christ and model what God wants a mother to be and give my children something to follow. That's the biggest thing that you as mothers and we as fathers can ever do, is decide that we are going to follow Christ and that we are going to model and be the example that we want our children to follow. You see, what happens so many times, and I've been guilty, because you see, I spent 10 years or so out there in all kinds of different things. And I raised my children and I tried to teach them, Mama Jean, do as I say and not as I do. I'm drinking, but I don't want my children to drink. I'm doping, but I don't want my children to dope. I'm irresponsible, but I don't want my children to be irresponsible. All kind of things that I was doing, but I really didn't want my children to follow in my footsteps. Listen, the best way to... what about if we could get to the place in our lives where we want our children to follow in our footsteps? What if we were to decide, I'm going to seek God with all that I am and all that I have, and I'm going to be you're going to be the woman of God. I'm going to be the woman of God that God wants me to be. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm tired of trying to fix it. I'm going to model before my children the mother that God intends for me to be, and instill in them biblical principles and values and standards. The greatest thing that you can do for your children, married, divorced, absolutely makes no difference whatsoever, because as I said, there are families that are still together that are failing at mothering and fathering. They're doing good at heeing and sheeing, but they ain't doing too good at mothering and fathering. So none of that even matters. What I'm saying this morning is we have the opportunity today to make the decision that I'm going to give my life to Christ, that I'm going to follow after Christ, that I'm going to be the mother that I want my child to become. I'm going to model before them. What's lacking in society is mothers that will lead by example. And what's lacking even more than that is fathers that won't lead by example. That's the only way to lead, is by example. There is no other way. What we need most in our society and in our country is men and women that will follow Christ and leave an example for our children to follow. I'm so glad this morning that Wanda and I got things straightened out when our daughter was about 7 or 8 years old and our son was 3 or 4 years behind her. I'm glad this morning that God got me straightened out, and very little of that life do they remember. We have given them something to follow as they have grown up and grown into adulthood, and we've given them something to follow. You know what? The Bible says that you raise up or train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he'll not depart from it. So many times today, there's just nothing for the child to follow. And I want you to know this morning that it's not too late for you as women. I got it that time. And for us as men to be, hey, we want a better country. Get a hold of this. This is simple. We want a better country and a better community and a better church and a better home. It starts with a better woman and a better man. It starts with a better mother and a better father. And it's never too late to become that. Never too late to become that. Believe it or not, you are leading somebody. You are leading your children. Whether that be good, you're leading them or you're misleading them, one or the other. But our children are watching us. They're watching us. They're going to follow, most likely, in our footsteps. They may stumble and bumble and fall and mess up and blow it and get out here and do their own thing as I did. But it was in there. It was in there. I knew I'd been taught right from wrong, and values had been instilled in me by my parents and by my raising. I had good parents. And it was in there. I had something to return to. The mothers that make the biggest difference. We can talk about a lot of different things this morning. But the mothers that make the biggest difference are the mothers that will persistently and endlessly and tirelessly and faithfully pray for their children and stand in the gap and hope for and believe and work for the very best for their children. And mothers that will love their children unconditionally and not throw them away when they mess up. They're going to mess up. They're going to mess up. Mothers that will unendingly love their children. Mothers that will teach their children right and wrong. And these rights and wrongs are based on biblical standards and values. Not what the world says is right and wrong. Not what society says is right and wrong. Not what you even think is right and wrong. But what the Bible says is right and wrong. These things are not instilled and ingrained in our children today. And our society is worse for it. And it's a result of the assault and the attack that has been on the family. Mothers who love and lead their children by example in their own relationship with God. Those are the mothers that make the biggest difference. I can give them, we could go a lot of different ways with this morning and talk about a lot of different responsibilities of a mother. And a mother has a lot of responsibilities. They wash, they clean, they serve, they cook, I can almost tell a joke right there, but I won't. They cook, they clean, they love, they lead, they do all, so many responsibilities that a mother has. You figuring that out, ain't you, Laura? A lot of responsibilities. We men will never know the responsibilities that a mother carries and the things that a mother has to do. But I want you to know the most important of all things that you as a mother can do is to pray for your children. To lead by example in your own relationship with God. To love your children and don't ever give up on them. Oh, there's been times I've wanted to give up on that boy of hers. See, he's hers when I'm talking about it, and I guess he's mine when I'm proud. There's been times. There's been times where I want to just tell him, get your stuff, get out of my house, and go figure it out. Still have them thoughts. Still might just do that for his own good. Uh-oh, we get into some of that now. Mothers and fathers sometimes have to do things that are not popular. For the good. For the good of their children. But the mother that makes the biggest difference in a child's life is the mother that will pray endlessly and tirelessly and reach heaven on behalf of their child. The mother that will love the children unconditionally, that will teach them when they fail, that'll lift them up and encourage them. A mother that'll teach the children right from wrong according to what this says. And a mother that will lead by example in their own relationship with God. Mothers, there's a need in a child's life. Children need to be led even when they don't think they do. They do. Mothers have a natural instinct. And not only that, but they need to be needed. They need to be needed. The same thing that we're talking about maternally is also applicable spiritually. As we begin to grow in our relationship with God, we have a responsibility not only to raise up and to teach and do these things in our own children's life, but for us to bring some young Christian in and also be the spiritual mother in that child's life. And to raise them up and to teach them. I mean, this whole mothering and fathering thing is such a complete and grand idea and plan that God came up with. Nobody can replace a spiritual mother. I told Mama Jean the other day, I said, I'm becoming increasingly concerned. She said, why? I said, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when ain't nobody else praying for me, My spiritual mother's praying for me. And one of these days you're not going to be here, and who's going to pray for me then? Because I need the prayers of my spiritual mother, and the prayer and the love and the nurturing, and she has comforted me so many times with the letters that she's written me, or maybe just a few sentences on it. She'll probably have one for me when I finish this morning, but she'll usually have a note for me, and I'll read that, and I need that, and I need the leadership of my spiritual father. I need him. Matter of fact, I needed him Friday. I called him. I said, my lambs, man, I don't even know where to start. They found Wanda's mama dead this morning. She's in Florida. I got to figure out what I'm going to do and how to get her up here, and why. I don't even know where to start here. He said, I'll text you a phone number in just a second. I needed him. I called on him. He was there. He gave me good instruction. I met Friday with the guy up at Memorial Funeral Home, and just to show you how God works. Going to end up getting everything taken care of. Get her flown up here, and burial, and everything there is to do, airfare and everything, is going to be less than $8,000. I ain't got it. I will take that loan or something. She said, how are we going to do that? I said, don't worry about that. I got that. I'll figure that out. But that's grace. But I needed my spiritual father, and he pointed me in the right direction. I need him. I need you sometimes. My spiritual mother, for counsel and leadership and instruction. Mama Jean has modeled to me, even though I've not seen her, she's modeled to me what a praying mother, spiritual or maternal is all about. Today, the only thing, we can't do anything about days past, years past. We can't do anything about the circumstances that are in our life. We can't do anything about how we ended up in this situation. We can't do anything about anything. But what we can do this morning is we can decide, make decisions this morning that that we are going to become better fathers and mothers for our children. Listen, we live in a time where if children don't have something that's genuine to follow in a mother or a father, I can promise you there's something out there to follow. If mothers and fathers don't get it right and model before the children what a mother and a father ought to be and what humanity is all about, I can promise you there's a lie out there to follow. And they'll follow it. They'll follow it. There's been a steady decline in morality and leadership and parenting and all kinds of different things as the years have progressed. I know this is simple this morning, but I want you to know the biggest woman in the world is the woman that decides. Is the woman that decides that I'm going to be a better mother. That I'm going to be the mother that God intends for me to be. I don't have children, but I'm going to find me somebody to mother. I sent one a text message this morning. And I said, I promise you she's still mothering. That's who she is. That's what she does. She probably tried to tell Jesus what to do this morning. That's who she is. That's what she does. She just has this natural giving, loving, serving, nurturing instinct about her. And she applied that not only to her biological children, but she is always trying to find somebody to help and to mother. Then that's That's needed in society today. Mothers that care. The biggest thing, the biggest mother that's ever been is the mother that won't give up, that they'll tirelessly pursue God on behalf of their children, as this little woman did. This little woman said, I don't care who I am or where I'm from or what mistakes I've made or what names they've called me. They've called me a dog because I'm a Gentile. It ain't going to stop me from getting a hold of Jesus on behalf of my children and on behalf of my little girl. The biggest mother in the world is the one that loves unconditionally and unendingly, and the ones that teach their children right from wrong and biblical principles and standards, and the one that leads by example in their own relationship with God. So I say this morning that mothers, let's give our children something to follow. If we don't give our children something to follow, the world will. They will. And it's not going to be good. So, today let us consider what it's going to take to become the mothers and the fathers that God intends for us to be. Let us determine in our hearts today to follow after God and to teach our children to follow after God. That's the very best I can do, Adrian, as a father, is to follow after God and to teach my children to follow after God. If I'll do that, they may make some mistakes, but it'll be okay. It's in there. It's in there. I think so many times of children. Maybe let us not only consider becoming better biological mothers and fathers, but also spiritual mothers and fathers as well. Learn to appreciate your mother. Oh, she's here. I told my daughter. My daughter's never had to deal with death this close to home, and I told her yesterday morning, I said, listen, you need to deal with this. You need to learn how to deal with this. Because unless something bad happens, you're going to outlive me. Unless something bad happens, you're going to outlive me, and you're going to have to deal with me and your mama moving on. I'm not only determined this morning to be a better father, I'm determined this morning to be a better son. I'm leaving here and I'm going to my mama's. I'm ashamed to say this morning that my mama just lives across town and my dad. And I ain't seen them in probably a month. I got to do better. That's not acceptable. I stay so busy with church and with work and working on everybody's busted vehicles. And that's a whole different story in itself. When we get too busy for our mamas and our daddies, we're too busy. Mamas and daddies, when we get too busy for God, we're too busy. Too busy. We live in a busy society. I'm deciding this morning, I'm reminded, when they found my mother-in-law dead Friday morning, I'm reminded how temporary this life is. And my thoughts this morning is, if we are going to do anything, and do anything powerful, and do anything right, we best be getting on with it. We best be getting started. So I've determined this morning, Stephen, that I've got to be a better father. That I've got to be a better son. Don't know how much time I've got left to influence my children, to influence those around me. This is my opportunity. This is our opportunity to be the mothers and fathers and sons and daughters that God intends for us to be. So it's not all just about mothers and fathers this morning to me. It's about sons and daughters as well. I've determined in my life that I've got to become a better son. I love my parents, my mother and father. But I've got to do better. I'm going over there when I leave here in just a little bit. I'm going to give my mama a hug. I'm going to tell her how much I love her. For what she instilled in me when I was growing up. That's why I am where I am today. I blew it, I messed up, I crashed and burned and drug it through the ditch and slung mud for 10 years. But I am where I am today because of my mother. They would not fail to pray for me. They would not fail to teach me right from wrong. They wouldn't hesitate for a second to whip me with whatever she could reach when I needed it. I've got whipped with everything from fly swats to belts to pots to whatever she could get her hands on, that's what I got it with. But I needed it. You see, Mama's got to do the hard stuff sometimes too. Daddies do too. Now listen, I'm heading over there in just a few minutes and I'm going to enjoy the afternoon with my mother. She's not always going to be with me. I've not only got to be a better father, I've got to be a better son to my mother. And as I look at these things this morning, we can't do anything about what's past, where we're at, or how we got there. But we can do something about where we're going. We can do something about where our kids are going. We can do something about where somebody else's kids are going. By leading by example. The biggest impact that a mother will ever make in a child's life is when the mother decides, I'm going to follow Christ and lead by example. Because our children, whether spiritual or biological, they're watching. And they're following. And what are we giving them to follow? Doesn't matter. We deal a lot here at this church with broken homes and broken families and kids getting restored. We deal with all kinds of things. But the exciting thing is when a mother or a father or a mother and a father decides, I'm going to follow Jesus and I'm going to give my children something to follow. Our bad decisions and where we've been and where we've come from, nothing has to stand in the way of us being the mothers and the fathers and the sons and the daughters that God intends for us to be. I don't have time to preach on all you kids this morning. Mothers have a very important role in a child's life. And it's a role that the fathers can't fill. Fathers have an important role as well that the mothers can't fill. I could go on and on and on this morning a long way with different things, but let me just encourage you this morning. I just wanted to read this one story this morning because this is a woman that made a great difference and was had great impact on the life of her daughter. But it was because she had decided to pursue Jesus. She had decided to find Jesus. She had decided to reach Jesus and trust Jesus on behalf of her daughter. The greatest thing that you can do as a mother this morning is to follow after Christ and give your sons and daughters something to follow because they're watching. They're listening. They're looking. And whether we know it or whether we like it or not, we are all leading or misleading somebody. And we need to determine in our hearts that we're going to follow after God and we're going to teach our children. If we don't teach our children, the government will. That ain't going to be good. If we don't teach our children, society will. That's not going to be good. Let us not only decide this morning to be better mothers and fathers, but spiritual mothers and fathers, and better sons and daughters. I pray this morning, sincerely, for the mothers that are having to play both mother and father. You follow after Jesus and lead by example and trust Him and everything. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I pray this morning for fathers that are having to be both father and mother. What a load it is to carry when one has to fulfill both roles. It's a load. It's heavy. And the devil's even figured that out. If he can get you wore down and wore out and discouraged of having to play both roles, get you to quit, don't quit. Dig in there. Decide I'm going to be the mother that God intends for me to be and lead my children by example. And when they get old, if they make their mistakes, that's okay. It'll be like ragu spaghetti sauce. It's still in there. It's in there. And if it's in there, it'll come out. Because you see, some of us are just like me. We just have to learn the hard way. And you had to learn the hard way, Adrian. Listen, we need to value our children. We need to value not just our children, but children. Children enough to lead by example, to tell them the truth, to teach them the truth, to be the men and women and sons and daughters and fathers and mothers that God intends for us to be. May God strengthen each of us to carry the load that we must bear, to be the influence that we ought to be in the lives of our children. In closing, what mother is it that makes the biggest difference? The mother that will persistently pursue Christ for their own life and for the sake of their children, that will teach their children right from wrong according to the Scriptures. This ain't never let us down, guys. It ain't never been wrong. It's never let us down. It bothers me this morning that our society and some of our government want to change the name of Mother's Day to accommodate same-sex marriage. Why? Because Satan knows all too well the importance of both a mother and a father in the life of a child. So may we all this morning make the decision that I'm going to follow after God. I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to give my children something to follow. If I don't teach them and I don't lead them, Mike, somebody else will. I promise you. No matter, just like this little lady right here. Get a hold of this morning. No matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, no matter how bad you've blew, no matter how many times you've made the just busted newspaper, no matter what's going on, no matter what situation or circumstance you're in, it makes no difference. You still can make the decision this morning that I'm going to be all the mother that God wants me to be. I'm going to teach my children. I'm going to follow after Christ. I'm going to give my children something to watch, something to follow. I'm going to be responsible. I know this is a simple thought this morning, but the mother that makes the greatest impact and the greatest difference is the mother that follows after Christ and raises that child up in church and teaches them right and wrong. Though they may get stupid, it's still in there. They know. You still, no matter where my son goes or what he does, it's still in there. It's still in there. I know that. I've seen him in the altar worshiping with his hands in the air. I've seen him. I've seen him. He's got a little smarter than me and God both right now. But that's all right. From the time he was about 5 or 6 years old, I've tried to raise him right. And I've tried to teach him right. And I've tried to lead by example. And because of that, he's going to be all right. I don't choke him out for me. Listen. God's given us the responsibility as Christians to lead. As parents to lead. As parents to lead, obviously, our own children, but as Christians to lead other people. Mothering and fathering. Not heeing and sheeing. Mothering and fathering is such a powerful thing in a child's life and in a Christian's life. So I say this morning that I need to decide this morning that I'm going to be a better father. I'm going to be a better son. I'm going to be a better spiritual son. I need to be a better spiritual father. And give people something to follow. Mothers do make a difference. You'll never know the difference that you can make in a child's life. I know this is a simple thought this morning, but everybody stand if you will. I've just talked to you from my heart this morning. I know, Stephen, I'm telling the truth. I know what I'm talking about when I say that there is an assault on the family. There is an assault on the family because if he can get one or more parents out of the life of a child, he'll have a better shot at that child somewhere down the road. But I can determine, and you can determine this morning, I'm going to be the mother that God intends for me to be, whether the father is in the picture or whether he's going to do it with me or whether he's not. I still have the decision to make that I'm going to be the mother that God wants me to be. And I'm going to be the father that God wants me to be. I'll go and throw fathers in there too. Listen, this is a simple thought this morning, but God invented it. He invented it. He knows the power of mothering and fathering. Mothering and fathering have not failed. We have failed in becoming the mothers and the fathers. Mothers that make a difference are mothers that... Let me sum it up in one sentence. It takes me an hour sometimes to preach one sentence. Mothers that make the biggest difference are the mothers that will follow after Christ, lead, and teach by example. Them's the mothers that make the biggest difference. Because that's something that'll last them forever. That's something that they can return to. Tracy, go ahead and play a song this morning. I don't know exactly how or what to do with this morning as far as an altar call is concerned, but I know this. What God says this morning is it's time. It's time. It's time we quit playing games with this thing. It's time that we quit all the silliness. We give it all to God. And we become the mothers and fathers and the spiritual mothers and fathers that people so desperately need to follow. I don't know about you, but I'm deciding this morning that I've got to be a better son. Got to be a better son. Maybe you need to tell your mom and your daddy you're sorry this morning. I don't know. For the trouble you caused. That just came out. That's God. I'm going to be apologizing to my mom and dad for being too busy for them here in just a little while. Maybe we need to decide this morning. I've not been the best role model, but I'm going to. If you want to pray this morning, just make your way on up. Such a powerful thought this morning about family. I don't feel like I've done the best job of delivering that this morning, but such a powerful thought in family. That's the beauty of church, is it's a family. That's what I love about our church, is we're a family. We're going to love each other and prop each other up, help each other. Family is a powerful thing. But no matter your situation, circumstance, or how you got there, it's never too late to be the mother that God wants you to be, or to be the father that God wants you to be. Go ahead and turn that up, Tracy. If you want to pray, just make your way on up. Appreciate you being here this morning. Pray for me, for Wanda, for our family. Tough.
When I walk by your side, I can only imagine what my eyes will see when